Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to give you my top 4 digestive supports. So I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've been on my own gut health journey, but I've now also helped approximately 1,000 people with different digestive issues. And that's given me a really nice sample size of trying different supplements and experimenting with different things with different people to see generally what tends to be worth the money, what gives you a really good result, and what tends to be a bit kind of like hype or something that's not really so effective for the majority of people. And I'm also going to throw in a little bonus. I'm going to give you a couple of supplements to avoid based on my own experiences and what I find everybody tends to gravitate towards to take, and is actually a waste of money. So let's start at the top with number 1, Betaine HCl. Betaine HCl is, in my opinion, the biggest game changer when it comes to digestive health. I don't want to get too sciencey here, but I really want to just elaborate a little bit on why this is, because once you understand how this impacts your digestive function, it's going to change your whole perspective, not only of how your digestive system works, but it's going to help you understand why Betaine HCl is so important. So Betaine HCl is a physiologically appropriate replacement for stomach acid. What this basically means is it's exactly the same type of acid as we produce in our digestive system. So Betaine HCl stands for betaine hydrochloride. So it's hydrochloric acid. This is literally the exact same acid that we produce ourselves in our own digestive system. This is what physiologically appropriate means. Now, the reason Betaine HCl is so important is, first of all, it completely liquefies your food. Everything that leaves your stomach is supposed to be a liquid. This is all of these foods, especially if you're a bit like me, maybe you eat a bit fast, you don't really chew enough, you've got these big chunks of food that are coming down. Your stomach acid has to completely liquefy all of the food that you eat before it enters the small intestine. Think about animals that have very strong stomach acid. So like wild cats, like lions, for example, you do not see them chewing their food. They're eating raw meat and they are just grabbing it and they are ripping it off with their teeth, and then they're swallowing it whole, and they have such potent acid that it just dissolves it, completely turns it to liquid. But this is also true of vegetable matter, of starchy carbohydrates, of all foods. We want to completely liquefy them, and this is really important because all of your other digestive machinery cannot function on the food if it's still in a solid state. We have to get all of the food broken down into a liquid so that all of our other digestive enzymes and bile and brush border enzymes and all the other functions of the digestive system are dependent on the fact that your stomach acid has completely liquefied your food. So if this hasn't happened, every other part of your digestive machinery is going to suffer. It's also really important because your body knows that acid, and having a strong enough acid in the stomach, is the beginning of the digestive cascade because it influences all of these other functions downstream. It's literally the biological signaling mechanism that we have to activate all of the rest of these digestive functions. So if your stomach acid levels are low, you will not release digestive enzymes, you will not release bile, you will not stimulate gastric emptying and a powerful motility. So your MMS, your migrating motor complex, which controls motility, all of these functions will be inhibited or disabled. So this is absolutely the most important. And the best thing is we can just replace it with a supplement. We can take Betaine HCl as a physiologically appropriate replacement for stomach acid, and it will re-enable all of these functions. It's also worth noting that Betaine HCl is the first line of defense. It is a part of your immune system. You kill more pathogens with your stomach acid than with all of your immune system combined. Your Betaine HCl in your stomach kills more than all of that other stuff. So this is extremely important. It protects you from SIBO, it protects you from Candida. You need acid to digest all of your minerals. Minerals having an alkaline aspect to them, need an acid to be bound to be absorbed. Acid is so important. Now, before you just run off and you click off this video and you go and buy some Betaine HCl, let me give you a word of caution, because I know how important this is, and I made a really big mistake, and I created actually quite a chronic problem for me. So don't go and order it just yet. Please let me explain the use case and how to do it properly, because I did it wrong and I don't want you to make the same mistake. So the capsules of Betaine HCl that you get, they're usually about 500 to 650 milligrams. The maximum I would recommend ever taking would be 2 of these capsules. I personally read that you should take more and more and more until you feel a burning in your stomach. That means that you've reached a strong enough stomach acid. I went up to taking 10 or 11 capsules. I did this for a few days in a row. and it has basically landed me with some chronic gastritis. So I've got this chronic irritation in my stomach lining, and this was completely self-induced. This didn't happen from my mold exposure or from antibiotics that I took or from all these things. It was from me basically being stupid and not knowing what I was doing with taking Betaine HCl. So I caused this problem for myself. I'm still dealing with it a little bit today. It doesn't really influence the way that I eat. Like, it doesn't kind of like flare up, or it doesn't give me food sensitivities or anything like that, but there's this chronic burning, and I'm still working on it. I do believe there's an emotional root there. I do believe that I did do a bit of a silly, stupid mistake. So don't just run out and do it. Do try it. Make sure that you only take 1 or 2 capsules at an absolute maximum. Build your dose slowly. And there are a couple of individuals that should not take Betaine HCl. These are people that have gastritis or any type of like ulcer or this type of thing in your stomach. Even if you have irritation in your small intestine, it may also be potentially contraindicated to. If you have either of these, I probably would avoid it. And instead, I would recommend that you watch another video that I'm going to flash up on the screen using the power of post-production called "Do you have low stomach acid? Here's what to do if you don't tolerate Betaine HCl." Because this is a problem I had. This is a problem that a lot of people have, where you want to take Betaine HCl, you know how important it is, but you can't tolerate it because you have gastritis, or you take it and it makes your stomach hurt, or whatever. There are a lot of other things that we can do to support stomach acid without having to take Betaine HCl. But if you've never tried Betaine HCl, you don't have any chronic burning or gastritis or any kind of irritation in your digestive system, you absolutely should try it, because I have seen people have huge breakthroughs. I'm talking like they take one supplement and 80% of their symptoms improve. And now you can probably understand why it's so important, because it liquefies your food, it activates all of the digestive function, and it is a physiological replacement for acid that might be missing. So for me, this one comes absolutely top of the list. Extremely important, but also not for everyone. And please don't go crazy like I did, because that was a big mistake, and I do regret that. So moving on to number 2 on our list, we have, dun dun dun, surprise, surprise, digestive enzymes. Digestive enzymes are one of my favorite supplements, just simply because they have such a broad spectrum of effect. They are generally good for almost every single person, and there are some people that might not feel a benefit, but it's very, very rare that someone has a negative or isn't able to tolerate these for some reason. It does happen, but it's very, very small. So we have to look at what enzymes are so that we can understand why taking digestive enzymes as a product could be really helpful. So enzymes, in essence, sciencey bit warning, are catalytic proteins. Catalysts are basically substances that speed up reactions and are not consumed in the process. So one enzyme can increase the speed of like 1,000 different reactions and it doesn't get used up. It's kind of like, imagine a key that can open like 1,000 locks, and the key is still useful. You know, you can keep opening more locks. It's not like you put the key in the lock, you turn it, and then it's stuck and doesn't work anymore. That's kind of how a lot of chemical reactions work. But enzymes, they can be used many, many, many times, over and over and over again. This is why you can take a very small dose of a digestive enzyme and it can have a profound effect, because it's working on all of the material that you're consuming with that digestive enzyme. So digestive enzymes tend to be really helpful if, one, you do see some sort of solid food in your stool, especially vegetables. If you're seeing the animal products that are solid, that's more of a clue that the acid is off. If you're seeing solid vegetable matter, that's a clue that your microbiome is slightly deficient. And taking a good broad spectrum digestive enzyme replaces a whole host of different enzymes. It replaces pancreatic enzymes, so the enzymes we produce from our pancreas. This is amylase, protease, lipase, these sorts of enzymes. It also will replace some of the brush border enzymes. So these are things like, for example, maltase or invertase. These are enzymes that we can produce from our lining of our small intestine. So these wiggly microvilli protrusions that we have on the lining of the small intestine. If your gut is damaged, and this is very common with people like with celiac disease, for example, what happens is instead of having these big microvilli protrusions, they kind of become very, very small, and they're only like this. And you don't really have many brush border enzymes, and therefore you lose the ability to digest some of your food. And finally, we have the microbially produced enzymes. So if you have a microbiome imbalance, a dysbiosis, candida, SIBO, these sorts of things, we lose the ability to produce enzymes like cellulase, which we don't produce ourselves, but our gut bacteria produce for us. And if you look at taking a good broad spectrum enzyme supplement, you will cover all of these three: the pancreatic, the brush border, and the microbially produced enzymes. Generally speaking, enzymes are so helpful because they speed up the digestion of food. So when you get a big broad spectrum one like this, whatever it is in the food that you're not digesting, breaking down very well, you're going to cover that base. And even the ones that you are digesting okay, you're providing your body with additional support so it doesn't have to work so hard to do it. Your body is intelligent. It doesn't just get lazy when you start taking digestive enzymes. Instead, it takes all of that energy, that metabolic energy that it had to put into enzyme production, and it reallocates it into other things. So, for example, we're looking at digestive enzymes, and digestive enzymes take about 80% of the enzyme capacity production that the body can produce every single day. But there are a lot of other enzymes that your body needs for metabolism, for muscle synthesis, for detoxification. And if your body has a deficiency or is unable to produce enough of these enzymes, the first place you're going to see it is the digestive enzymes, but you will also see a reduction in all of these other enzymes as well. In my experience, I find enzymes tend to be best for people with either constipation or diarrhea. I would say more specifically constipation, because that's a sign that the digestion is really slow. It's not really moving very fast, and enzymes speed things up. But they can be helpful with people with diarrhea if they're seeing some solid food in the stool, especially the vegetable material. And usually someone that will benefit well with these, you will tend to see them presenting with fatigue as one of the health presentations. Is very, very common. And again, you think about it, fatigue is a lack of energy, and enzymes are catalytic proteins that speed up reactions. So not having enough energy is kind of an indicator that your body is not functioning fast enough and it's getting really sluggish. Of course, there are lots of causes of fatigue, but generally speaking, people that tend to do really well with enzymes, they usually have constipation or diarrhea, a fatigue-like presentation, and also very commonly some upper GI issues. So this can look a bit different for everyone, but usually it's like a combination of there's almost always like a bloating component, like this bloating and gas, this feeling of distension, and also food sensitivities. Food sensitivities, I've made videos about this before. Almost everyone I talk to, they don't actually have true food sensitivities. They actually just cannot break down the food that they're eating for some reason. If we can support the digestive system to be able to break down these foods so the individual can digest those foods again, a lot of the time the food sensitivities will significantly increase. And I'm not saying food sensitivities don't exist. It's possible to be sensitive to salicylates or oxalates or histamines. There are definitely genuine food sensitivities. But a lot of the time, it's just simply because your body can't break them down. And that's what's triggering the sensitivity. If you can start breaking it down again, you might find that you can eat them again. I've had clients that are literally avoiding gluten completely, or they don't eat any carbohydrates because they feel terrible. And then we take a digestive enzyme that has amylase and maltase, which are the two enzymes you need to break down starchy carbohydrates. And all of a sudden, they can eat them and they digest them and they have no bloating, they have no symptoms, they have nothing. Because they didn't have a true sensitivity. They just didn't have the digestive capacity to break these foods down. Third on the list, we have ox bile. This, for me, is not such a big hitter as the first two. I think Betaine HCl and digestive enzymes, absolute top tier amazing supplements. However, we do need something to support the bile, which is one of these other digestive functions. I always look at the digestive system through the lens of the 5 pillars. This is sort of like a system that I kind of created myself through my own study and my own research in my own healing journey, because I wanted to figure out why do I feel terrible all the time? Why can't I digest anything? So the 5 pillars is a framework that helps you, in essence, condense the majority of digestive function into a very simple framework so that you can identify where you have digestive problems. And if you split this up, it literally looks like stomach acid, digestive enzymes, bile, motility, and mucosa. These are the 5 pillars. These are the 5 core functions of the digestive system. You can see we've got Betaine HCl, which covers stomach acid really well. We've got digestive enzymes. We cover that with a digestive enzyme supplement. So we're literally, what we're doing in this video so far is just working through my framework with the optimal product that supports the dysfunction in this pillar. It's a little bit more difficult when we get to bile, because bile is a little bit more complex. The reason being, bile actually has several functions. The stomach acid and the digestive enzymes are a bit more straightforward because they're purely digestive mechanics. They're just there to support the digestive process. But when you start to look at bile, it gets way more complex because bile serves several different functions. But what we're looking at in today's video specifically is the digestive function. So I wanted to highlight one product that can be really helpful to support the bile function. And it's very simple. We literally just replace the bile with an exogenous bile supplement. So ox bile is a product that is, in essence, they get a cow, they kill it, they take its gallbladder, and then they kind of extract the bile out of it. And they take this bile concentrate. They put it in a capsule and you take it. So you're basically taking bile from an outside source. And again, it's pretty close to physiologically appropriate. It's not identical because obviously you are not a cow. However, we have very similar digestive mechanisms, at least in this regard. A cow's digestive system is completely different. It has 4 stomachs. It eats primarily, well, basically solely grass, and it mostly digests things with its bacteria in its gut. However, the bile itself is physiologically very similar to human bile. So taking it as a product actually does a pretty good job of replacing human bile. So the best situations to use this tend to be if you've ever had some like liver or gallbladder dysfunction. So if you've had elevated liver enzymes, or if you struggle with digesting fat, or you've had your gallbladder removed, or you have a history of gallstones. These can also be helpful for some people that have some genetic mutations that can be connected to the health of the bile. So like methylation and the MTRR mutations, BHMT, these can all be connected to bile flow. So potentially this could be a good option here. You see what I mean? It's starting to get a little bit complex because bile is a lot more complex because it serves several different functions. It's not just digestive machinery. But let's just highlight that digestive function. So the goal of bile is essentially to do the same thing that soap does. So when you go and wash your dishes after you eat, you can try and clean your dishes without soap. If you've had something greasy, it just simply will not work. You can sit there and wipe it and wipe it and wipe it, and it will always have this greasy film. And this is because fats are hydrophobic. This basically means that fats and waters and like water-soluble compounds, they don't mix together. And the job of bile is to do exactly the same as dish soap, is to make these fats dissolve in soluble liquids. So things like water, for example. The reason this is really important is imagine in your digestive system, the stomach acid has just done a really good job of turning everything into liquid. And now it needs to go from your stomach all the way through your digestive system so that it can be absorbed. But you've basically got this bit here, which is like all of the meat and all of the grains and all of the vegetables. And then you've got this like fatty bit that's like stuck on the top and it doesn't mix. And if it doesn't mix in, all of these other digestive functions, like your digestive enzymes, for example, they can't work. They can't do the job that they're supposed to do. So bile, the function digestively, is to make these two things mix together. So they become one mixture that your body can then really start to work on digesting and breaking down and absorbing. I'd say the biggest caution that you have to have if you're considering using ox bile is that it can be extremely caustic. So to paint a picture for you, to give you an example, when people have their gallbladders removed, they have to do this procedure so carefully because if they cut the gallbladder in a way where some of the bile that's stored in that gallbladder starts to leak out, it is so caustic, it will literally start to dissolve through the tissues inside the individual that's having that surgery conducted on them. It is extremely dangerous. And if this happens, the doctors literally panic. This is really, really caustic. It's very, very destructive. And it's really important because we want these very powerful forces to help us in the digestive process. But just to paint a picture of how caustic this is, it can be a little bit irritating, especially because you have to take it as a supplement. And very often this is mixing in the food in the stomach, which is higher up in the digestive system than this would usually happen. So again, if you have gastritis or you have any kind of irritations in the lining, you might find taking bile acids to be a little bit irritating, and you might want to either start with a really, really low dose or consider supporting this part of digestive function another way. I really don't want to overwhelm you because bile is such a big topic, but I promise you I will one day, I will make a full in-depth bile guide. If you're really interested in that, please make sure you leave me a comment below. You have no idea how much it means to me to know that you are actually interested in the things that I want to talk about. I'm telling you, this bile video that I could make is going to be a nerd fest. It's going to be very useful. It's going to be very informative and helpful. I've done so much different stuff to try to support bile flow. And I've got so much experience that I would love to share with you, but I really like making videos that you actually like. You know, there's no point in me making it if like 5 people watch it. So if you're really interested, let me know below and give me a little emoji of your favorite fatty food. So you could put like a fried egg, you could put bacon. For me, probably would be bacon. Bacon's like pretty up here on the list. I do like bacon, but put your favorite high fat food and let me know that you really want this video about bile. And we'll go into way more than just the digestive functions. But the video is getting long and I don't want us to go on too much longer. So I'm going to maybe save the best for last. And You're probably going to guess what this is if you've watched any of my other videos before. It is impossible for me to make a video about gut health and not talk about probiotics. It's just simply impossible because they are so important. As I mentioned earlier, I made this 5 pillars framework. I actually realized that these 5 pillars, so these 5 pillars here, they are built on a foundation. These 5 pillars, they cannot function without the foundation, which is a healthy microbiome. The reason for this is your microbiome influences the function of all of these 5. For example, if you have H. pylori in your stomach, it's going to suppress acid production. The best way we can get rid of H. pylori is beneficial bacteria. If you don't have the right microbes, you can't produce digestive enzymes. If you don't have the right microbes, you cannot clean your bile. You cannot remove the toxins from it. You do not have that function. If you don't have the correct microbiome, your motility will be terrible. The primary function of serotonin in the body is not as a neurotransmitter in your brain. It regulates gastrointestinal motility. Serotonin is produced by our good gut bacteria. All of these 5 pillars are orchestrated. They are built on this foundation of a healthy microbiome. And in my experience, the best intervention that we have, at least to get started with modifying the microbiome towards what we want it to be, is probiotics. Now, probiotics is very nuanced and not all probiotics are made equally. So what I'm actually going to do to wrap this video up is suggest that you go and take a look at my probiotic master guide. This is literally a step-by-step guide with exactly what probiotics to take in exactly what doses. We've got an extra section for people that are extremely sensitive. It walks you through microbiome testing. It literally gives you a step-by-step guide to get started, to know what to look for in a probiotic. And I actually give you my favorite products in that video as well. So I will throw the thumbnail up on the screen here and I'll put a link somewhere for you to click it. You should definitely go and watch that video. But before you leave, I want to give you a couple of pointers of supplements and products that I find to be a bit overrated and not really worth the money. So if you want to save yourself some money and a little bit of pain of trying a supplement and having it not really make much difference, make sure you watch this little bit. So first of all on the list, we have glutamine, L-Glutamine powder. I find this is way overhyped. It helps like 1 in 100, 1 in 500. It really doesn't make a difference for most people. I hear people talking about it all the time. I took it. I see almost all of my clients have already taken it. And I asked them, did it really help? Nothing. It never helps anyone. Please don't buy L-Glutamine powder. It really doesn't work. Next to these different like cleanses and flushes. And there is a place for these things. Like I would be a fan of say like juice fasting or doing something like coffee enemas. But really these things tend to be a little bit more kind of like fanfare. They're a little bit kind of more exciting, you know? And the thing is like sexy sells. And you want like, oh, I did this flush and I had all these stones just coming out. Or like, you know, I even have like quite a miraculous story about how good a coffee enema was and how effective it was for me. But generally speaking, these tend to be a little bit overhyped and it's really about the use case. You really have to make sure that it is the right thing for you. But generally I find these cleanses that you buy like as a product, like as a supplement that you take, I find them to be consistently unsatisfactory. They just generally don't provide very good results. And finally, something to just be cautious with would be prebiotics and different types of fibers. So these things can actually be extremely helpful. And I do talk about these in this video that I just mentioned about my probiotics step-by-step video. However, I would always caution taking a prebiotic before you've done a microbiome test first. Because when you take a prebiotic, you're feeding whatever is in your gut already. And if your gut is full of imbalanced microbes, if it's full of dysbiosis, you might be taking a supplement to try to help your gut when you actually could be making it way worse. And I don't like to be like the fear-mongery guy. I think you really feel through my videos that I'm very hopeful and very optimistic. And I really try to lead with courage and bravery and like being honest and sincere. I really don't like this like populating things through fear or this like fear porn kind of stuff. I really don't like that, but I have seen people try prebiotics and they really don't help and they can make things a lot worse. And especially like you go to the doctors and they'll say, oh, you have constipation. Here you go. Here's some extra fiber. Here's some psyllium husk. And they did that to me and it did not help. It actually made things way, way, way worse. So if you are going to take any type of prebiotic, so this is like inulin, this is fructooligosaccharides, HMOs, acacia fiber, guar gum, so PHGG. If you're going to take any of these things, just do a microbiome test first, okay? Because you'll hear a lot of good things, but usually the people that are using these prebiotics, they tend to be a little bit like they're a bit more like veterans in this game. They've usually all done a microbiome test, and they're using the data from the test to tell them which prebiotics to take. So don't just like hear that someone said, oh, I took PHGG and it healed my SIBO. And I actually know of a case study where someone literally took lactulose, which is a prebiotic, and it's actually the prebiotic that they use to test for SIBO because it causes so much fermentation and they can measure it on the test. They actually took 20 grams of lactulose a day and it cured their SIBO. So it is possible. However, you have to be really cautious. And this is like a niche example that paints a picture, but is generally not good advice to follow. It's really important for you to test your microbiome if you're going to experiment with prebiotics. And again, as I said, I talk about that in my step-by-step probiotic master guide. So the video is finished now. So I would suggest you go and take a look at that video because it's one of my favorite videos. I absolutely love it. I put so much care into that. And there is literally nearly 10 years of information and experience distilled into like one 30-minute video. So if you haven't seen that video yet and you like the sort of stuff that I make, you are absolutely crazy if you don't go and watch it now. So go and watch it. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.